question 4, and I call on the Honourable Member for Onchan, Ms Edge.
Okay, Mr Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister for Education, Sport and Culture if he'll make a statement on the spending of free school meal scheme set up during COVID.
For the Minister for Education, Sport and Culture to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. On March the 23rd, our schools closed for all except vulnerable children and those of key workers. Teachers put in considerable efforts to support local families who depended on free school meals and used a variety of ways of providing these. After a period of consultation, the Education Service decided a more pragmatic response was needed to ensure all eligible families were provided for. There were 2 schemes providing grocery vouchers during the recent state of emergency and the period directly following this. The first operated during term time, running from the 20th of April to the end of the summer term in July. During this period, a total of 7,859 vouchers were issued for primary school children whose parents were eligible for free school meals, and a further 5,991 vouchers issued for eligible secondary and UCM pupils. Of the vouchers issued, 7,205 and 5,598 were redeemed for primary and secondary schools respectively. The total value and therefore cost of the redeemed vouchers was £165,715 for primary schools and £125,338 for secondary schools, resulting in a cost for all schools in UCM of £291,053. The department would normally fund free school meals through schools at a total cost of £205,000 for the summer term. The additional cost of this scheme was therefore just over £86,000. At the July sitting of Tynwald, the second scheme, the School Summer Holiday Voucher Scheme 2020, was approved. This scheme provided for the issuing of 3 fortnightly grocery vouchers throughout the period from the 27th of July to the 6th of September 2020. The total cost of this scheme was £141,913. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Ms Edge.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thank the Minister for that comprehensive answer. The Minister stated that there was only 141,000 thereabouts spent, but he actually, in a recent answer from the Treasury Minister, there was £220,000 allocated. Can the Minister confirm that he has only received the 141,000? What's happened to the rest of it? And can the Minister also advise if we have any families who have to isolate that are entitled to free school meals in the future, would there be any support available from the department for a voucher scheme so that they still can continue to feed, to provide for their families?
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Just to go over the figures again, there was £86,000 for the initial scheme and £142,000 for the supplementary scheme, which amounted to £228,000, which was met from government contingency with the approval of Treasury. In terms of Ms Edge's, the Honourable Member for Onchan, further question in terms of what happens in the future, as I stated in the speech in another place in July, when the Honourable Members unanimously supported the summer voucher scheme, unfortunately such schemes are in some ways a sticking plaster to cover inequalities that still exist in our society. And at the time, I would say that I was very supportive of the Minister for Policy and Reform's efforts to accelerate the efforts of the Cold, Hunger and Homeless Working Group to provide a detailed analysis for this issue and a blueprint on how we as a society can solve these problems in the future. I'd also like to point the Honourable Member's attention to the Royal College of Paediatricians and Child Health, who issued a letter in October signed by over 2,000 members, who again said food vouchers will not solve this problem, but they offer a short-term remedy. Mr Speaker, what we need is a long-term remedy for the problems of holiday hunger, and I'm very optimistic that when the report is published in the near future, which looked at this issue in a more holistic way, we will see a range of opportunities for supporting those hard-working families on our island. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mrs Kane.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for his response, and we all look forward to a longer-term solution. But in the short term, can he tell us whether the Department gave any consideration to extending the voucher scheme during the half-term break and also the forthcoming Christmas holidays? Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the Honourable Member for expanding on what I've just said in terms of the Holiday Hunger Working Group, which is looking at these issues. Without sounding like I'm copping out, the Department of Education, Sport and Culture is empowered to provide food to pupils in attendance at schools when those schools are open. Our powers to provide meals outside school time are constrained, and that's why the holiday, the grocery voucher scheme, which was approved by Treasury, was actually passed under the Financial Provisions and Currency Act 2011. What we need to do as a government is look into the actual reasons behind holiday hunger, the reasons why some families struggle to have enough money to provide food for their children at certain stressful times, particularly during summer holidays, but also during Christmas holidays, and find a balanced solution for this issue. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mrs. Corlett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Minister agree with me that actually the voucher scheme was a quick fix to help families at a particularly difficult time, and that any further schemes must target the help so it actually does resolve the problem? Would the Minister also agree that there are families on low incomes, those just above the benefit threshold, who pay for everything, including school meals, who then end up with less money to keep their family than those receiving benefits, and no consideration has been given to those families so far? And would the Minister agree that establishing who needs financial assistance is not the job of the DESC alone?
Minister's reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for her comments. She's quite right that the voucher scheme was a pragmatic response to exceptional circumstances on our island. To begin with, I think lots of teachers and catering staff across the island worked very hard to see if they could continue to provide meals for children, but ran into real problems with those children who had to self-isolate, those children who didn't have transport, and the social stigma of walking through the doors of a school that was closed to other children just to get food. And so we do need to tackle this. And it is a complex situation, a complex issue, and different individuals are in different financial circumstances. And so one size does not fit all. She's also right that our the ability to qualify for free school meals on the Isle of Man is based on receipt of employment persons allowance, income-based job seekers allowance, or income support. And that counts for around about 17.4% of the pupils are now eligible for that. I have to say that some of those pupils, and a proportion of those pupils, do not take up free school meals, again, even though they're eligible for it, which shows the dignity of a lot of the families we have on our island who are on very low incomes. Even those on benefits sometimes do not take up this, and we saw that similarly with the uptake of the voucher scheme, that some people sent them back and said, actually, I don't need these at the moment, I can make do. But I certainly take on board her comments about a wider look at people on low income who may be not qualifying for these benefits, who do not qualify therefore for free school meals, but are still struggling to make ends meet, particularly as we come out, hopefully, of the coronavirus situation we're in. We do need to make sure that nobody is left behind. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Ms. Edge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't believe the Minister answered my question with regards to the £220,000 that was allocated from Treasury, which was specifically the COVID fund for the summer. The Minister give all the figures out. Can the Minister confirm that all of that funding was provided for children for free school meal vouchers? And if there is some money left in that pot, can he consider helping families who may be in need? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I'm very sorry if the Honourable Member didn't hear me properly. I specifically said that the £86,000 for the initial scheme and the £142,000 for the further summer scheme amounted to £228,000, which is the figure she gave. That was met from contingency funds from government and from Treasury. So the money wasn't given, the money was claimed back from Treasury after being spent. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister has described the scheme as pragmatic, which it is, and an emergency, which it is. Would the Minister concur that this scheme was not actually in line with the agreed means testing principles, and any scheme worked up in the future should be? And secondly, does the Minister agree that the Smart Service Framework would be an excellent place to take this forward, because that is aligned with the means testing principles?
Minister to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I thank the honourable member for raising this issue. This Honourable House has talked in the past about means testing and needs testing, and there is a big gap between them. I actually disagree with him slightly because the free school meal allocation is based on a rough idea of means testing in terms of the receipt of relevant benefits, which are similarly means tested. So it's a proxy measure. In terms of the smart services framework, I hope that can further be developed to get around some of these anomalies in terms of means testing. But there's a much wider bit of work to be done, which is why I'm very happy to support the work of the Cold, Hungry and Homeless Working Group and their reports looking at those people within our society who, by no fault of their own, can become the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Final supplementary question, Ms Edge. No? Okay, we move on.